With the new live stream coming soon and Zibai being the newest playable character that is classified under the term of angels, this is a good opportunity for me to explain what angels are. Honestly, while they are not part of the official Krai factions being mentioned in the web event, I feel like they need their own episode for the Krai Exordia since they made quite an impact in Krai and the whole of the VAT already. That said, however, I have made two videos talking about two angels already, that being Zibai and Nabu Malikata, and you can watch them later if you want, but for today, I want to talk about what angels are as a whole and not individually. Of course, it'll be inevitable that I'll talk each one of them eventually, but don't expect me to explain all of them in great detail. In today's video, I'll explain the duties of the angels, how they turn into a Seelie, their powers, other possible angels, and their end goal. As always, don't forget to give this video a like and comment so the channel can be noticed by the algorithm. My name is Glitchxcity and I make lore and commentary videos on this channel to keep you company. The new year is coming very soon, and so are the new characters. In the next update, we'll be getting Colombina and Zibai as the new limited characters, where Colombina will be a new lunar support that enhances lunar reaction playstyle, while Zibai will be a new Geo main DPS that introduces lunar crystallize to the game. I personally am pulling for these characters myself, and if you need extra Pama gems to pull for these characters, then allow me to introduce you to Loot Bar. Loot Bar is a reliable site for a fast, secure, and super reliable top-up experience for your Genesis Crystal. Additionally, they provide 25% discounts compared to normal prices in-game and supports consoles as well. Loot Bar provides a special discount each update and also a guaranteed bundle, so be sure to check them out. Once you start your top-up, they will only ask for your UID, nothing else, so your privacy is guaranteed and your items will arrive to your account in less than 2 minutes. If you like Miliastro Wonderland, you can also top up Kernel Nexus in Loot Bar the same way as you do it with Genesis Crystals. Over 30,000 Trustpilot reviews are showing their satisfaction after using Loot Bar, and if you have any problem with your transaction, their customer service is always available if you need assistance. Other than Genshin Impact, Loot Bar is also available for other games as well, such as Honkai Star Rail, Wuthering Waves, Settler Zone Zero, etc. Click the link in the description below and register to get an additional 10% coupon that can be combined with all other discounts and receive special discounts for returning customers. Now let's continue with the content. Krai Exordia Chapter 5. Angels. Angels. The first time we learned that term in Genshin is from Yohualtijuhtin, who refers to herself as a pre-evolved Seelie. Prior to that, we only knew them as Seelie ancestors from Moonlit Bamboo Forest, and they are implied to have beautiful forms. Angels are also known as the envoys of the heavenly principles, as mentioned in the finale of the Deep Galleries, and the mention of envoys of the heavens are quite prominent in a lot of the artifact sets. For example, the 4 tiaras that you can obtain from defeating bosses and also Flower of Paradise Lost. There is also mention of this by the imagery in Ankanomia, or also known as Delphi Phyto, Dragonspine mural, or also known as Solving the Knir back in the past, and also Natlan murals. Angels are tasked by the heavenly principles to guide humanity, as they are the envoys sent by the heavenly principles himself. The first angel, Koitar, is said to be the daughter of the heavenly principles and is said to be the fairest of them all. Considering that's the case, it's very possible that the Pale Princess and the 6 Pygmies could talk about the angels instead of them talking about the Archons or the Khaenri'ahns. But that is just speaking out loud here because we still have no idea what the other chapters talk about. Koitar is also implied to be the leader of the angels, and the Hyperboreans sent the Voyager as a heretical speaker to plead forgiveness to her in a domain under Hyperborea's Irminsul tree. That said, however, it is also implied that the angels reside within the moons, with Zibai and Nabu Malikata used to reside within the palace of the 3 moon goddesses. Not only they are tasked to guide humanity, but they are also tasked to fulfill the wishes of humanity as well. Nicole, as one of the angels who used to guide the Hyperboreans, said that her race provides them with a new civilization to live in, and Zibai is implied to grant wishes to the warriors alike whenever they visit her abode. Even after the funerary year, some of the angels still guide humanity in their own way. Nabu Malikata co-ruled Sumeru with Deshret and Rukkhadevata to guide the people of Sumeru. Sibilla created Phobos to free the people of Remuria from Fontaine's prophecy, and Yohualtijuhtin is the only angel that until today still guides humanity. There are more characters that are likely to be classified as an angel, but we can talk about that later. Anyways, the meeting of Koitak and Seutak of course became the fall of the angels, but Koitak actually knew about it being the case as she told her fellow angels about this from a revelation she saw according to Skirk's ninja weapon, Azure Light. In that meeting, Yohualtetuhtin, Sibila, Nabu Malikata, and Zibai were present, and looking at the behavior in the quests and readable so far, it seems they're aligned with Koitar's ideals. Eventually, when the funerary year and the War of Vengeance came, the angels were cursed by the heavenly principles and turned into silly whenever they fell in love with someone instead of sharing them equally. Looking at how the angels fall, it seems the heavenly principles knew that love is one of the things that freed them from the heavenly principles' shackles, that is their crown, and instead of getting free from that shackle, fell in love, turning them into a silly instead. It's worth noting, however, that not all angels are aligned with Koitak, as one of the angels referred to her as an ignorant in the Etherlight Spindelute, the same angel that is mentioned in 1.0 book called The Drunkard's Tale. It is said that the angel resides in the royal court of the Sealies and is apparently near Lake Amsfartnir. For context, Farka went to this lake prior to our meeting with him in Luna 2, and that angel also met the wolf in Drunkard's Tale as well. We'll talk about this later. More sources that talk about the angels is of course the popular Moonlit Bamboo Forest, where it talks about the White Horse Adeptus, now known as Zibai. Even though the book never mentioned Zibai as an angel or Seelie, it did describe her being surrounded by Seelies near her. Zibai also guided the boy in the book to the exit, matching her behavior with Seelies in general, where they guide people to treasures. The story then continues in another book called Springs of Hidden Jade in 5.2, with Zibai meeting Guhua, describing her experience during her days in the Hyperborean era. Following that up, the records of Jueyun also mentions this as well, and even though the book never mentioned Zibai, it did talk about the fate of Koitak and Seutak, where they were separated for eternity by the heavenly principles and have their memories completely wiped. Other sources are of course from the world quests and interactable items. Nabu Malikata is mentioned a lot in Sumeru's world quest, and in fact, co-ruled Sumeru alongside Deshret and Rukkhadevata. Another is Sibila, who is mentioned in Remuria questline. I took some time to read about her, and it seems that just like Nabu Malikata, she is one of the angels that tries to help humanity in freeing themselves from the shackles of the heavenly principles, and in her case, by creating Remus's grand symphony called Phobos to grant the Remurians their wishes. But unlike Nabu Malikata, Sibila's way of doing that is by sacrificing herself with a lack of will and her deepest desire to make everyone happy ingrained within Phobos. This desire unfortunately also grants the darkest and evil wishes of the people of Remuria as well, corrupting Phobos in the process and causing the fall of Remuria instead. So to say that Phobos is an angel, it kinda is, especially Phobos refers to itself as the ones known as Sibila, but it's more to her own will than it being an actual angel. Of course, we can't forget Yohualtetuhtin, as she is directly mentioned as an angel by herself in the Archon quest. There's also Nicole, who introduced herself directly as an angel. There's also Zibai, and finally Mr. 9, who was introduced to us all the way from 1.0 as the writer of The Legend of Shattered Halberd and the Flowers of Princess Fischl, but is actually a Seelie as per Fischl's Witch's homework quest. Also, fun fact, Mr. 9 has the same voice actor as Cyrene and Renova. So, even in another game and another universe, she is still writing stories. So of course, Mr. 9 will eventually write a romantic story that never has come before. You think so too, right? The angels have peculiar powers. First of all, relating to their duty to guide humanity, they of course have to make them happy. This is mentioned plenty of times, including in the book called Before Sun and Moon, where the people of Enkanomia were granted the year of prosperity with angels guiding them and providing for them. It goes the same with the Hyperboreans as well, where Nicole said that she and her fellow angels grant them civilization to live in. In terms of guiding, they were tasked to teach humans language and the laws of nature. They are also tasked to bring oracles to help them understand the future, and with that in line, they seem to be able to see the future themselves, with Zibai and Nabu Malikata were implied to be able to do just that. Nabu Malikata foresaw the cataclysm before it happened, while Zibai foresaw the future of the boy in moonlit bamboo forest to travel across Tevat and return to Qingsu village eventually in his old age. Koitar is also the same, where she saw the future where her race would fall, and she also saw a future where humanity will transcend the shackles of the heavenly principles. Aside from those, it is implied that these angels are able to create creatures from their own body. Nabu Malikata created a genius from her wounds, and Koitar was able to create a face, albeit with the help of the Frost Moon and her fellow angels as well. There's also cases like Zibai, who can take shape into a white horse, and Nicole say that she can take shape into her preferred form. This means that angels seems to have the ability to take shape of whatever they want or what shape they find to be presentable. These are the canon lore of what we know about the angels so far. Now let's get into a bit of a speculation side of the spectrum. Before we continue, do note that these videos took some time and effort to make, so of course, if you can hit the like and subscribe button, you are helping this channel a lot by putting it into the algorithm. With that said, let's continue. Most, if not all, angels are related to the Irminsul in one way or another. For example, Koitar is said to reside under an Irminsul tree in Hyperborea. Sibila was tasked to guard an Irminsul tree in an ancient city ruins, likely somewhere in Fontaine, while Yohualtichutin created the Night Kingdom using the broken ley lines, which should also imply that the Irminsul tree in Atlan was burnt and broken down. With that being said, it's very possible that the Princess of Solvindaknir is also an angel, as she was born under the Irminsul tree that is now known as the Frostbearing tree. However, she is probably half angel, especially that she has a father, and her ability to see the future likely came from her mother, who until now is never mentioned in the game. Either that, or she was probably sent down by the heavenly principles, or maybe the moons, or maybe the shades under the Irminsul tree in Solvindaknir Pacton, and her father eventually adopted her. Her father Farouk is a high priest in Solvindaknir, so it's possible that he occasionally met angels during that era prior to the funerary year. Since we are talking about possible angels, I mentioned in my Zibai video that some of the characters in the 2025 Lantern Rite, more specifically the Lone Butterfly of Crimson Flame and Jade Bloom Silverwing, are likely angels as well. In the last Lantern Rite, we learned that Zibai and her other two companions are not Adeptis, but they're not humans either. Of course, it's possible that the butterfly and the silverwing are illuminated beasts, but it's possible that they're angels, as the three are implied to share the same features when it comes to their power. Azure Light also implies Zibai to be forever wandering alone waiting for an encounter, which could imply her to be left alone from her fellow angels. Both the butterfly and the silverwing are also shown powers that are related to the shades, just like how Zibai is related to Istaroth. The butterfly likely is related to Renova, while the silverwing is likely related to Nibirius, as both their powers are related to life and death. That being case, it's very unlikely that we'll see them playable. The butterfly sacrificed herself during the Argon War to seal a god, while the silverwing likely turned into a Seelie because she was implied to have gone wandering and likely became a couple with Lanyan's ancestor named the Wind Reader. I already made a whole theory about this in my other video, so you can check that out if you're interested. Next one, there is this angel that no one talks about just as often, and that is the one in the Drunkard's Tale and Etherlight Spindlewood. Yes, the one that we just talked about earlier. It's not a surprise if not a lot of people even knew about this particular character, because the book in itself is, let's just say, really old. And I remember a lot of people were that interested in the lore like how it is now. But yes, aside from the ones we know, this angel apparently retained her form as well, and with what we know in Etherlight Spindlewood, it's very possible that this court of Seelies being mentioned here is indeed in Krai, more specifically in Lake Amsfartnir. Since Farka visited this place prior to our meeting, it's very good to assume that this place is indeed connected to Mondstadt, and possibly, and more specifically, Boreas. I actually talk about Boreas in my Knights of Avonius episode, but now that I read more lore about Mondstadt, this is a good opportunity for me to talk a bit deeper with Boreas and his possible connection with this angel. This is a huge speculation, by the way, so bear with me with this one and take it with a grain of salt. So Mondstadt is not what we used to see right now. In fact, it's a lot closer to how people describe Snezhnaya, where it used to be a snowy wasteland that was ruled by a cruel god of storm at that time by the name of the Krai. The now known Storm Terror's lair, or basically the Valin's dominion in the present, used to be the Krai city that is commonly now known as the Old Mondstadt, but it was then destroyed after his own people rebelled against him with the help of Barbados during the Archon War. As to how this even relates to Boreas, that's because the wasteland was created by using his own power. According to Andreas's past material, it's possible that the land turned into a snowy wasteland after Boreas got his power from an unknown god, and it's unclear whether reshaping the land was intentional or not. But one thing for sure, Mondstadt used to be a wintry place, and it became the way it is today after Barbados turned it into what we see now after he ascended to Archonhood. For a while, this unknown god is quite a mystery, let alone not a lot of people talk about it either. After reading the lore again and again, I came to a conclusion that the wolf in Drunkard's Tale and Etherlight Spindelute is very possible to be Boreas. As for one, the court of Sealy is in not Krai, or at least somewhere near it, as it is stated in the weapon to be near Lake Amsfartnir. 2. Farkas' expedition is apparently somewhere in the north, so it's either in Snezhnaya or in not Krai, which we soon learn to be both, and Boreas is said to be the wolf of the north. 3rd, the Drunkard's Tale also talks about the wolf from the north, specifically in chapter 4, where people at that time have dreams of this wolf and the same angel specifically. Finally, in Moonlit Bamboo Forest, we learn that the wolves are important towards the moon as they are related. So it's possible to assume that the angels and the wolves are related to the moon, and this wolf and this angel specifically could be the same case as well. It's worth noting that the Knights of Avonius are currently camped in Not Krai for the time being, so it's very possible that their camp is currently somewhere in the new area where Paramida, the Lightkeepers' main headquarters, resides. It is said that Farka went to Amsfartnir prior to our meeting because there's quite some problems with the Wild Hunt, so it's possible that Lake Amsfartnir is one of the main reasons why they came to Not Krai specifically, as it also relates to Boreas. That being said, this angel is likely the person that Farka wants to meet, or at the very least, this angel will be relevant in our next story or possibly in the world quest. I also talk about her being one of the angels that disagree with Koitar because she called her ignorant. I talk about this in my Heavenly Principles is Evil or Not video, and the moment we got new information about the Heavenly Principles in the newest Archon quest, I can definitely see her view now. To her, if only Koitar just followed the Heavenly Principles' orders, this wouldn't have happened. My view on the Heavenly Principles is quite neutral now, especially that they did what they did for a reason. Besides, it's hard to even cast a judgment on him if our only POV right now is not from him but from other people. Whether this angel will be playable or not, she might be, but I don't want to put your hopes too high. If she is playable, however, and assuming she is the one who gave Boreas his power, then she is very likely to be wielding Cryovision or Moonwheel, or at least related to the power of Cryo. Now, there is certain possibility that these angels has always been shackled by the Heavenly Principles from the start. Especially, it is stated quite frequently in the finale of the Deep Galleries where the word shackle is implied to be some sort of mechanism to make the angels do what the Heavenly Principles say and do not dare to oppose him. The crowns they wore were implied to be the case, and Tevat is said to have been bound by 4 bound shackles, which of course refer to the 4 shades of the Heavenly Principles. It was only after Koitar fell in love with Seodar Froinen that she finally realized the truth of Tevat, and her crown finally shattered, which should really be the main reason why the Sealy's curse is related to love to begin with. Now, the curse of the Sealies is quite specific because the only way for it to work is that if the angel fall in love with someone else and not share the love equally to the humans surrounding them. Which even then, this love that the Heavenly Principles want the angels to share is not even true love to begin with, as the finale of the Deep Galleries imply this love as the angels' duty to mandate the nations, likely maintaining absolute authority that the Heavenly Principles has. Again, it's very hard to cast judgment because on one hand, the Heavenly Principles did what he did in order to protect humanity, but on the other hand, it's rather extreme because he's more like caging humans rather than letting them free. Since the angels can foresaw the future, then it's possible that the ending of Teyvat's journey is indeed to traverse across the stars, or more specifically, the moment the traveler triumph against the heavenly principles, their way of shaping the world is indeed giving the freedom to the people of Teyvat, whether humans or dragons alike, and let them to truly traverse the universe. I'm gonna put a crackpot theory here, but what if the traveler is the true Akivili from Honkai Star Rail? Just give it a thought for a moment, but I'm not going to elaborate further on that. Finally, I talk about the angels related to the moons because it's possible that they're created using the power of the three moon goddesses, just like the shades were created using them as well. Well, at least the theory is supposed to be that way. Whether the shades created the angels under the heavenly principles as orders, it's very possible since most of the angels were somehow related to their respective shades, like Yohualtichuktin under Renova, Zibai under Istaroth, etc. Just think of it for a moment, alright? Because somehow, all of these entities have such similar power, especially their power to create life forms from their own body or power. After all, Columbina, a moon goddess, created the Kuhankis the moment she was born 500 years ago, so it's not entirely far-fetched if all of these entities have such similar power. It could also explain Asmodeus' disappearance, don't you think? Again, this is a very crackpot theory, but it's worth noting that all angels are related to the shades and the moon. I'm pretty sure we'll get our answers in the next quest, whether during Lantern Rite or in the Archon quest itself. But since we talked about Skirk's signature weapon earlier, I just have this very deep thought, but for a very long time, I try not to talk about it because it can easily be debunked. You see, I find it a bit weird that despite being an outsider, Skirk is one of the biggest sources of what we knew about Koitach and the angels in general, whether from the finale of the Deep Galleries, as it is implied that all of the stories in that artifact set were her discoveries, and Azure Light, Skirk's weapon, is the weapon that used to be wielded by Koitach herself. Not only that, Skirk's story quest shows Skirk's younger self in a form that resembles a Seelie, which I always have this deep thought that Skirk might be an angel herself. The reason I even talk about it is because we only knew that the angels are created by the heavenly principles, likely using the power of the moon goddesses as implied to be the case with Zibai and Nabu Malikata, and likely are parts of the shades as well. Skirk's case is similar to Nilou as we learn Nabu Malikata's story from her, but her story doesn't have very in-depth lore about Nabu Malikata. All we know is that Nilou's outfit was inspired by her, and the Sub-Zero's dance is a dance by Nabu Malikata to celebrate Rugadavata's birthday. Skirk's case is different because it's almost as if Skirk is related to the angels. Here's the thing, I can't help but find Skirk's existence to be an anomaly, because without her existing, the story of Genshin Impact would be just fine. Maybe it'll have a bit of clash with Child's story, but the majority of it won't be affected that much, because even Alice initially doesn't want Skirk to be in Teyvat, not helping that Skirk has some resemblance towards the angels, more specifically Zibai, as they have the same white hair, and in Skirk's case, she has a small wing behind her. It's likely fins, but it was never explained why she had it in the first place. Not only that, it's unclear why Skirk's homeland is even attacked, and we have no idea who attacked it other than the planet that eerily looks like Teyvat's false sky. The only explanation we got is that Skirk's planet has already adapted to the Abyss, which according to the neighboring planets, her homeland is considered as a threat. The ironic thing about it is that no one on Skirk's planet even knew for it to be the case. In Azure Light, Koitach also mentions brothers and sisters, meaning that her meeting with the angels are more than just the 4 angels that are aligned with her. This could mean that there could be male angels as well, the same with Skirk who has a father. And if Skirk is one of the angel races, then this means that the angels are not created by the heavenly principles, not created by using the power of the 3 moon goddesses, but potentially slaves from another planet, and by using the power of the moons, the heavenly principles created the crowns to shackle these people and turn them into what we see now. Besides, their crowns are using the power of the 7 elements, the what we now know as the power that can defeat the Abyss better. Now, to be fair, the timeline clashed really hard, but remember that the time in Teyvat runs differently than the Abyss, but it's probably not even with the Abyss specifically, but rather time in Teyvat likely runs differently from the outside world. So, if we assume that the angels are originally Skirk's race, then there might be more timeline shenanigans at play because timeline discrepancy is not uncommon in Genshin's story so far, and all of them are indeed intentional. The Bakunawa still has no clear timeline as it was created either 500 years ago or maybe even longer than that, because Mondstadt already has history of it being the case prior to Natlan's history, and currently with what we are experiencing right now, there are 4 moons in the sky instead of 3. It could even explain Koitak's rebellion to not only free the humans, but also free her own people, and while all angels are under the Heavenly Principles' jurisdiction, Skirk is the only survivor that escaped the shackles. After all, this is aligned with Koitak's future sight where humans, angels, and gods live together in harmony to traverse the stars. Perhaps, along with the Traveler, Skirk will play a huge role in not Krai and Genshin's endgame. This is not only aligned with Koitak, but also Featherfall's prediction, as according to him, Skirk's fate is that the stars shall bow down to her in her honor.